Why do some people have these encounters and others don't? I think we all do, but we just don't recognize it. But the one thing that I would say is be open to it, believe in it, and then just be aware, pay attention. Pay attention. You know, listen to that small voice inside. If it's telling you to turn left instead of right, why not do it? It's not going to hurt anything. And you could avoid a traffic jam, or you could see something that you needed to see because you turned left instead of right, or you could avoid an accident. We never know. Just why not act on these things? When it makes sense. And I always ask people to just try with low stakes things first.
Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here. I just want to put a brief plug in for my retreat at Unity Village, Missouri, which is October the 16th through the 19th. This year, it is a whole planet spirituality retreat, and our theme is Homo Ahimsa Rising. That's kind of an intriguing title. You can learn all about it at thespiritualforum.org/retreat. And I'm very excited today because my guest today is from the Kansas City area, which is very, very close to Unity Village. So let me introduce you to her. Christi Clemons Hoffman is the author of the newly published book, Real Life Angel Encounters. She's also the co-author of the best-selling book, Gap: Simple Steps to Reclaim Your Health and Reverse Most Chronic Diseases. She's also a level 3 quantum healing hypnosis technique practitioner and a lifelong intuitive, a teacher, a coach, and a consultant, and her passion is assisting others to see who and what they truly are. Christi hosts 2 podcasts, the Real Life Angel Encounters and the Radiate Wellness Podcast, which, like this one, brings authors, thought leaders, and other inspirational guests to an international audience. Welcome, Christi.
Thank you, Reverend Carol. I am so happy to be here and happy to know that you're a Unity girl like me.
Yeah, that was so fun. Before we turned on record, we found out that we had that in common. As I mentioned, most of my guests don't know about Unity, and it turns out that you've been steeped in Unity for years, so it's wonderful to be with another Unity person.
I've been on Unity Radio as a guest on a couple of shows there, and yeah,
Wonderful.
I love Unity.
It's very lovable.
It is, and started right here in Kansas City.
Yes, it sure did. It sure did. And I love having my retreat there at Unity Village. It's a very sacred place and it's beautiful. There's, hundreds of acres of property, beautiful buildings, fountains, and there's just a radiant energy because of the prayer energy that had been going on, the prayer ministry that had been going on there for like 130 some years. I think that's why it's just really, really a light, beautiful, a radiant energy. And it's just a great, great place to be and a great place to hold a retreat. And you know that since you've been there. Okay,
Yeah,
so before we start, let's do a quick little rapid fire round with you. And my first question for you is in just a couple sentences. Can you tell me what your message is?
my message is that we are never alone and we are so much more than we think we are.
Bingo. That's it. Really. I love that. Okay. Do you have a
It's
word? It's that
Mhm.
simple. It is. It's that simple. It's not that hard. Yes, we're never alone. And that's so comforting, isn't it?
I think so. We always have help around us. We never have to feel lonely, feel like we are lacking input, never feel like we're having to tackle things by ourselves because we've got a huge team with us.
We got a team. We got a team. We're going to be talking about that team in just a few minutes. Do you have any word or a phrase that guides your life or is a guiding principle for you?
Mhm. This too shall pass, I think.
That's a good one. That is a good one. Isn't that the truth?
That is so true. Doing what I do as a QHHT Level 3 practitioner, I do hypnosis. These are hypnosis sessions that cover other lifetimes. And then we can also speak to our higher self and get answers to any question we would want to know. But going through with people through their other lifetimes, we realize that, oh my gosh, what you're living through now, divorce, bankruptcy, job loss, whatever it is, you've been through worse. I promise you've been through worse.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, we've been through a lot. We've been through a lot, and this too will pass when we're facing our challenges today. Great, great message. And then this is a very unique question for you. I'm wondering what your favorite thing is about Kansas City.
Oh my gosh, I love Kansas City. I love the arts here. We have a vibrant arts community.
People don't really, I don't think people get Kansas City. It's a very, very cool place. And very much like I live in southern Wisconsin, which is in between Madison and Milwaukee. And it's a hidden gem. I mean, unless you've been here, you have no idea why you would ever go this far north. Kansas City is also a hidden gem. There's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on here, and it is growing. It's growing a lot. It used to be so easy to get everywhere, and now there's lots of traffic and things like that. So, but it is still a hidden gem in a way, and just there's a vibrant dance community and music community, theater community, poetry. I'm a poet and poetry community. All of these arts, and there's a massive amount of talent here too. It's truly a hidden gem.
That's so great. And you huge football fans are there.
Well, that's true. I really don't get into the sports ball at all, but
I know there is though, because I know people who used to work at Silent Unity, which was a 24-hour, 24/7 prayer ministry, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And they would always talk about how what a privilege it was to pray with people with whatever needs they had. And then, a few days before the game, there'd always be tons of people calling in to pray pray for the team.
is that why we did so well?
Might be. Oh gosh. Okay, well, thanks for that. Let's start by you telling me about what path brought you to being interested in real life angel encounters. I think we're gonna be focusing on the angel encounters. Maybe at the end I'll talk to you about your gap health book, which I'm very intrigued by as well. But yeah, your background that really had you start focusing on that?
So how I got into the whole angel realm in the first place, it came from a crucible moment, a dark night of the soul. Let me back up. I was a baby when I saw my first ghost that I know of. And I was with my dad. He was a night watchman at this huge, sprawling 1930s era high school here in Kansas City. And my mom was a radiology tech at a local hospital. They both worked nights. My dad could take me with him, and he was a college student at the time, so he could study and do his rounds and kind of babysit this big building, and then bring me along in the playpen, and I would just play or sleep or whatever. And it just worked for us at the time. And one night I was babbling in my playpen and stood up and said, "Hi, Mr. Man," and waved my hand, and it freaked him out so bad he said he quit the next day. But since then, I just grew up being interested in cryptids and UFOs and magic and other realms, and it was just not a convenient way to grow up in southern or in, suburban Johnson County, where I was living outside of Kansas City. Just didn't had no frame of reference, nobody to talk to about that, no idea to know what I'm doing, what I'm seeing, feeling, and experiencing is real, and that it is a thing and it can be developed or harnessed, or I had no idea. So, kind of uncomfortable growing up, knowing things, seeing things, and feeling certain things, very, very sensitive as a child. And then, fast forward, I still kept this interest and tried to learn as much as I could about many things, but never really developed this gift. And then the bottom fell out of my life. My husband at the time decided he didn't want to be part of the family anymore, and I was devastated. I started Googling and searching for soulmates, karma, whole family, soul contracts, that type of thing, and led to Dolores Cannon, who developed the quantum healing hypnosis technique that I use. She was a metaphysician in her own right. So I found out about this method and technique, and I thought, well, that's what I need. That's exactly what I need to do. I need to do this technique with her. I called her office and I said, hey, I want to schedule a session with Dolores Cannon. And her staff said, well, she's booked up for the next 4 years. So if you can wait. And I said, well, I really can't. And they said, well, she's just started teaching people how to use this method. Maybe you can find someone near you, and gave me the website and to look that up. And I found someone here in Kansas City on the plaza, if you know the plaza. And this was a psychologist who was also the head of the Psychical Studies Institute. And I thought, oh, well, this is perfect. He'll be a great, great person to do this. So actually, my husband also went, which I was surprised, but we both went, and neither one of us were able to get very far with it. And it turns out that this person who was trained, the psychologist, was not doing the method the way that she taught. And we just didn't get very far with it. And he said, you know what? This doesn't happen that often, but if it ever does, I have someone I can refer you to. And he referred me to a woman named Gail here in the Kansas City area who does readings. He said, she'll be able to tell you about past lives, karma, soul relationships. You're in good hands. I had a reading with her. She was wonderful. I referred many of my friends to her. They had wonderful experiences as well. And she started teaching classes. So I took all of the classes that she was teaching and I learned how to develop and harness this intuition that I was using. And I started working with clients. And then along the way, I picked up Reiki because I was starting to meet other people who were doing this and working in this realm. And they were talking about energy healing. And I thought, what's that? But I thought, well, maybe that's the next thing I need to learn. So I took on Reiki, and then I took on the Akashic Records, learning how to do that. And then a couple of years later, I got laid off from my corporate job. I was working at Hallmark headquarters, also here in Kansas City. And I got laid off with 1,500 other people. And I said, I do not want to do another corporate job. I can't. This is killing me. And so I decided to open Radiate Wellness, which is a group practice. And at the same time, I had never forgotten about QHHT. It was always in the back of my mind. So when I was opening this business, Radiate Wellness, and the same week, I took a week off and went to Eureka Springs and took my level 1 certification for QHHT. It was insanity. Opening a business and taking a week off at the same time was probably not the best, but here here I am later, and I'm one of 53 level 3 practitioners in the world.
Wow.
I do
That's
this
so
all the time.
cool. Yeah, I love how it starts when I was a baby.
I know, I usually have people buy me a drink before I tell the whole story.
Well, I do think babies are very, they're like the veil is very thin for them, little ones, little toddlers, and we kind of poo-poo things when they see things or they talk about things, children, little ones, and it's very real for them. And a lot of the stories in your book, I think, also depict that. So it's fascinating, I think.
Yeah, we're all born intuitive, every one of us, and we have this ability to see things that we're not seeing with our eyes and feel things and hear things without our ears. And it starts from infancy. And we do hear so many stories of children who are seeing grandma in the room and grandma's past, children who are remembering other lifetimes that they've lived.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, we need to listen
And
to them.
just,
Yeah.
we
My
can,
my youngest daughter, she's 28 or 9, soon to be 29. When she was little, I know she saw, heard things in her room, and I feel horrible, but my husband and I just really wanted to get to sleep. She would wake up every night with, "There's someone in my room. There's something in my room. I hear something in my room." And, it took me a little while, a little too long to take it seriously because it seemed to me that she was just wanting to climb in bed with me. But but she was a sensitive, and we had to move this whatever that entity, that whatever was in her room, we had to move it out, and then she slept.
yeah, I trust that. I believe that. right? And these kids can be bothered by these things. And I work with parents of these spiritually gifted kids and let them know how to deal with that, how to talk to the kids where the kids know we believe them and trust them, and we're going to help them figure it out. When I was a kid, it was, oh, you're too sensitive. You're imagining things.
Right, right, yeah, right, and I think my own lesson is to believe and to trust it because I feel bad that I didn't for a while and that this child was really having this experience. She just didn't sleep, like, ever, and so I was very tired. Very tired.
Oh, I
Yeah.
understand that. When my daughter was little, she went through a period of having nightmares. And so I would ask her if she wanted me to call in the angels for her. And she always wanted me to do that. And so I said, "Okay, well, who are we gonna put up here?" So I put them all around the bed. I said, "Who are we gonna have here? Saint Michael, perfect. Let's put Archangel Michael there. How about Shamuel over here? Let's have Haniel and Jophiel, and let's ask Archangel Michael to put his sentries all around the room." And that helped her sleep.
I love that. I love that. Well, let's talk about the angels. I think that what's interesting about your book, and I'm sure your podcast, is it's like the angels come in lots of different forms. Sometimes it's some sort of actual angel, sometimes it's an intuition, sometimes it's a voice, sometimes it's just some ability, some miracle. So yeah, let's talk about some of these. Like, what is an angel? Let's start there.
Well, an angel is a spiritual being, and these spiritual beings are in service to humanity. There's a hierarchy of them. They want to help us, they need to help us so that they can advance, and they are eternal beings. They're not owned by any one religion or spiritual faith. And then there's the stuff we talk about in real life angel encounters, which, like you said, is more than just what we think of a Christmas card with a being with wings and a halo. They can show up like that, and there are some stories on the podcast. I'm trying to remember if I have any of those in the book. I don't think I put any of those in the book, but on the podcast, there have been some instances where an actual angel with robes and wings, and they are huge and they are full of light. Those can show up, but it can also be a man on a street corner who you would normally think of would be panhandling, but they give you a sign that God is listening. It could be that, and it could be a synchronicity, such as you are, on the side of a road and it's foggy and the low visibility, and this is actually in the book, and then your tire blows, and you know that I'm on this one-lane bridge, it's foggy, poor visibility. If somebody's coming around and doesn't see me, it could be bad for all of us. I need to get help. She called all of her contacts. I'm sorry, we can't come right now to help you. And then this gentleman pulls up, changes the tire, and all he asks for is a hug, which single woman in the middle of nowhere, foggy day, lonely road. I don't know that I would want to accept help like that, but she did. She just felt there was something about this man that she needed to let him help. And so it can be a synchronous event, like somebody shows up at the right time. Is that an angel? Maybe. I don't know. But it was definitely an answer to a prayer. And it can be anything in between.
That was an interesting story. I remember reading that one, and I think a lot of us have had things like that happen where somebody just shows up to help. And it would, under normal circumstances, might be scary, but you just feel that this is not scary, that there's something really beautiful about this. And, how cool is that?
I think so too. I should know this guy's name, but he was a geologer and he had this beautiful quote that I quote often, and it's in the book too. We can look at things as though everything is a miracle or that nothing is a miracle. I choose to believe that everything is a miracle. And that's basically the basis of all of that I do is that everything is a miracle. Everything is divinely guided. Wayne Dyer had written the book, There's a spiritual answer to every question because we're spiritual beings. And yes, there's a spiritual answer and there's a spiritual explanation, I think, behind everything.
Yeah, we tend to think these things are extraordinary, like out of the ordinary, like, wow, this crazy thing happened. But I think that's the way life is. Like when we're open, we see a lot more of this in our life. And I think it's just a matter of really paying attention, being awake, and being willing to receive the divine messages, the intuition, the all of it. And that these encounters are actually more like everyday life.
I think they are. And if we really pay attention, the chance phone call from a friend that you'd been thinking about. I had been thinking about taking this course, and then a friend of mine says, "Hey, have you heard about this course?" Or I've been hearing about this book everywhere, and I picked it up and it was so helpful to me, right? We can look at all of those instances as messages for us, answers to our prayers. Yes, you're paying attention to my thoughts and my desires because these things are showing up in my life. Or you can think, oh, huh, wasn't that weird? What a coincidence. Sometimes something is too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence.
Yeah, there are no coincidences.
No.
It's the divine life. It is life. And I think that we have the door closed to accessing so much of these miracles a lot because we don't believe, or we're stuck in our ego life, or the material, or something's, lower vibration. And when we just kind of like let go of a lot of that stuff, that then life becomes very magical. And I do think that there are so many little tiny things, just little things that when we really look at it, it's like, wow, thank you, God. Wow, that's amazing.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
so many little things. Like, I'm here in my office, and, of course, you can't see outside, but I've got a big deck with a pond outside of my office, and when clients come in for QHHT, I'll often have little visitors outside, and there's tons of cardinals, and when I see a cardinal come up, I know that this is gonna be a great session because Dolores Cannon's symbol is a cardinal. She's often, spoken about in those terms, like, "Oh, that's Dolores. If you see a cardinal," and it could also be our loved ones, but in those instances, I know that we're gonna have a great QHHT session because Dolores is smiling on it. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
like, yeah, you could look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, there's a cardinal. Isn't that pretty?" Or you could look at it and go, "Oh, wow, Dolores is here. She's saying hi."
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. That's very cool. Can we talk a little bit about the angel beings and what they are and what their role is and what rules and restrictions or boundaries they have around interacting with our life or making things happen in our life or helping or not helping.
Well, first of all, the biggest boundary is they cannot take our free will. We need to make our own boneheaded mistakes, right? We need to be a bonehead sometimes because that's how we learn. We only learn through lessons and adversity, right? We don't learn by everything being honky dory. So there's that. And then there's a chapter in the book about who are these beings anyway? There's, I talk about the archangels. There's 15 archangels, only two of which are depicted in the Bible, but there are in other texts such as the Kabbalah and the Talmud. And then there's ascended masters. They're a mixed bag. Ascended masters are all in service to humanity. Well, archangels are as well. They're in service to humanity. And the ascended masters are kind of a mixed bag. Some of them have been human before, like Yogananda and Jesus and Padre Pio. And then some are deities, like Apollo or Pele or Bridget, all types of different traditions, these deities. But they're all here to help us. And then in between and above is an entire hierarchy of angels. So when we're talking about this hierarchy, we have to understand that those are other dimensions. That's fifth dimension and above, all the way up to source itself, up to God. And we here on earth are living in 4 dimensions. There's the 3 physical dimensions plus the dimension of time, which is the 4th. When we pass away, our physical body remains in the 3rd dimension or 3 dimensions, and then the rest of us, our consciousness, moves into the 5th dimension. And so that's where we begin really talking about the other side. And we move up that hierarchy, 5th, 6th, 7th dimensions, and then we get to the angelic dimensions. Archangels are actually like mid-level managers. We're not the highest, we're not the lowest. I think that's because we're their biggest job is humans. And if they were all the way up to source, they might not be able to be as involved in our daily lives. But maybe I'm making that up. But I know that archangels are here to help us, as well as all of the angels on the other side. And there's two important exceptions, but angels have not been human before. With the archangels, Archangel Sandalphon and Archangel Metatron have been human. They were Elijah in the Bible and Enoch in the Bible, respectively. And then once they ascended, because they didn't die, they were ascended, like Mother Mary was. And then they were given this funny archangel name that does not fit the regular naming convention of L as the suffix, like Michael, Gabrielle, Jophiel, right? They've got these different names because they're very different than the other archangels. And they really understand human struggles and human tribulations because they had been human.
Okay. Okay. So, how do we know this? Is this something that you have intuitively perceived? Have you go ahead.
I've done some research on this, and so there's many different avenues for knowing about this out there. So Doreen Virtue, understand that she's had a big change of focus in the past few years, but her work on angels and descended masters is so solid. And then there's, Sonia Choquette, and her body of work on angels has been wonderful as well. And there are many other books and resources on angels. And so I'm always listening and paying attention to all of this information and just culling the information from a variety of sources.
Okay. So, what is their role then for us?
So role?
The role of angels.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to help us, to assist us, to be our partners in growth, partners in learning. Just to so we know that we're never alone. They help us. They can help us with protection, teaching, with being kind, being empathetic and empathic, 2 different things. But they help us. They can whisper in our ears. They can't interfere with our free will, but they could just suggest things. So if you wake up in the night and you think, "Oh, I need to write that book." We might think, "Oh, well, that's kind of a fluke. Why did I wake up thinking that?" And then we are driving somewhere the next couple of days and we think, I really ought to read that. I ought to write that book. It's like, huh, I wonder why that popped into my head. Well, that's our angelic team. That's how they help us. It's very subtle. It's easy to dismiss. It's easy to just gloss over it, but they provide that still soft voice inside of us that we can either choose to listen to and heed or not. We can always ignore their advice. We can ignore their pushes and their nudges. But it's the nudges that got me to real life angel encounters in the first place. It's crazy. So when I'm teaching people to connect and to pay attention to these signs, I always say once is a fluke, twice is a coincidence, but there's actually no coincidences. 3 times 3 times do it, because that is guidance.
That's a great rule. That's a great little rule of thumb. So
Yeah,
if somebody's like listening and going, I I don't know if I can really remember or point to when angels have helped me, but I want to get that. Like I want to connect with that. What would you tell them to do?
well, first of all, I have to say the angels don't care if you remember or acknowledge. I mean, they like to be acknowledged, but it's really us that takes that interest. But if somebody is wanting to have these experiences, and I have to say, we all have these experiences, but we might not know that it's attributed to our guides and our angels, right? But if we want to be open to that, because people all the time ask, well, why do some people have these encounters and others don't? I think we all do, but we just don't recognize it. But the one thing that I would say is be open to it, believe in it, and then just be aware, pay attention. Pay attention. You know, listen to that small voice inside. If it's telling you to turn left instead of right, why not do it? It's not going to hurt anything. And you could avoid a traffic jam, or you could see something that you needed to see because you turned left instead of right, or you could avoid an accident. We never know. Just why not act on these things? When it makes sense. And I always ask people to try with low stakes things first.
Yeah, yeah. I remember there's one story in your book about, a woman who always drove in the right-hand lane. Her father had taught her to always drive in the right-hand lane, and she kind of got this sense about, "I need to go into the left-hand lane," and which was I'm always in the left-hand lane, so that's not strange for me, but it was for her. And it kept her from hitting a cyclist that was, coming down in the right-hand lane. So she listened. She listened to that little nudge and took action contrary to her normal behavior. And kinda how
That
fun is
was,
that?
that was actually a voice in her
Oh,
head.
she had a voice. Okay, so it wasn't an intuition, it was actual voice. Yeah, voices are nice. I don't get voices, I get little nudges, but I'm waiting for
I
that
know
voice.
we all want the voices. We want the angels with the wings to show up and tell us we're supposed to do. And it's not gonna happen.
There's other instances in your book. There's the stories about the Cokeville
Oh my,
miracle and the butterfly people. Can you share a little bit about that? Those were nationally known stories, but they're fascinating.
they're fascinating. So I'll start with the Joplin miracle or the Joplin butterfly people because that's our home state. That's my home state, Joplin, Missouri. And there was an EF or what is it, E5 tornado, F5 tornado in 2011, and we had a tornado here just the other day in Kansas City, and this is a fairly common occurrence. And this was the E5. That's the biggest one that you can have, and it was devastating. And so many people lost everything. We met a family in Kansas City. They had it was when my daughter was in preschool, and this family came from Joplin because they'd lost everything and they were relocating, starting over in Kansas City, and they were going to the same school. And after the devastation, people started talking to each other and sharing stories. And they were sharing stories that the children were talking about these butterfly people that had beautiful, colorful wings that were helping them, keeping them safe. I don't want to give away the entire story, but one of these stories was really kind of cool. There's this little girl, maybe 2 years old, was in a car with her dad, and the tornado like flipped the car. And afterward, and they were both safe, they were fine, and they walked away from it. But afterward, they were talking to the police, and the police said there was just the two of you in the car. And the father said, "Yeah, just my daughter and me." And the little girl said, "No, daddy, the butterfly people. Don't you remember the butterfly people? They were keeping us safe." And there were many stories like this. There are other stories in the book, but the children were talking about this, and now there's a mural in Joplin that depicts these butterflies. It's
Oh,
amazing. Isn't that cool? I
yeah.
hope to get down to sometime. And then the Cokeville miracle. Whew, that was in the '80s, and I vaguely remember hearing this story, but the news part of the story, not the aftermath, just the facts. In the '80s. I remember hearing this. This was Cookeville, I think it was Wyoming, and this madman and his wife walked into an elementary school in Cokeville, this little town, and he had written a manifesto. He was going to hold the entire school hostage and ask for all of this money so that he could complete this manifesto. and complete, like, moving to this new earth or new society or something was coming out of this. And he was loaded to the teeth with this arsenal. He had a homemade bomb, and it was a bad situation. He gathered everybody in the school into one room. The teachers were trying to keep the kids calm, but everybody's on edge. And wouldn't you know it, the bomb went off. And the teachers were able to get all of the children, all of the staff out the windows. There was only one injury, and that was the music teacher. He made a full recovery. It was a minor injury. There were maybe some scrapes and bumps and bruises and things, but everybody got out safely. The only two casualties were this madman and his wife. Then afterward, after all of this happened, the children started talking about the angels that came down into the room and took most of the debris from the bomb up through the ceiling. They talked about this woman came and told me to stick with my brother and get out the window. All of these stories were coming out. And so these stories turns out that they were about loved ones who had passed on the other side. Relatives, grandparents, other relatives that these children hadn't even met, but they were identified. Identified from photos that that's who that was. And then talking about these angels carrying all of this debris, the shrapnel up through the ceiling because the bomb, it was later found out that the bomb had it not like there was a wire that was not attached or something. They found this out, which was part of the miracle that had that bomb been fully functioning, it would have blown the entire building to kingdom come. It was full of nails and shrapnel and things like that, it would have caused maximum damage, but it didn't. Caused a small fire, and it did cause a big blast that, knocked people over, but it could have been so devastating, and that's just part of this miraculous story. There's a movie made about the Cokeville miracle. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's quite good.
I actually just searched on that because 'cause I'd like to see that movie, and I imagine that what people often do is discredit what the children are telling us. It's, their fanciful imagination and, that didn't happen, and but I don't think that's the way it was, received so much, but I'm sure some people listening to the stories would go, "Right, right." But, like you said, the angels don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah.
No. And then in the Cokeville Miracle in the movie, it was made the movie was made by a religious organization, a religious, um, movie studio. And so, of course, all of the characters believed the children. Of course, it makes a better story that way too. I'm sure there were people who did not believe that as and also in Joplin, but when enough of the children are telling the same
Mhm,
stories,
mhm.
you are pointing out people in a photo album that they should not have known because they never met them, and they're saying, "Well, that's the person who came and helped me." It's really hard to dismiss that.
It's interesting, when you type something into the search box, and I typed in, Cokeville and miracle, and then the next word that came up was debunked, Cokeville miracle debunked, okay? So then I clicked on that because I wanted to see what it said, and it's AI is now writing all this stuff, and basically what it said was, Cokeville miracle has not been debunked. That some yeah, some people question it because this was kinda religious people that had this orientation, and they're telling the story, but it's not been debunked. I thought that was kinda interesting when you Google on Cokeville miracle debunked. It basically said it wasn't debunked. Some people question it, but it really wasn't.
I love that, I'm gonna have to Google that. That is beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I did it about an hour ago. I didn't put in debunked. You know how it fills out what you start to say, and you think, "Okay, this is what they want you to see." They want you to
Mm.
see this, and so that's why it filled out, and so I just clicked on it. It was interesting. So that's what
Yeah.
AI on Google had to say about it, so they didn't discount it. Really interesting.
And there are going to be debunkers everywhere. There are gonna be naysayers and people who say, "Oh, you're just making it up. That's wishful thinking," etcetera, etcetera. But, you read enough of these stories, you listen to enough of these stories, And that's what I love about real life angel encounters, the podcast, well, podcast first, but also the book, is that you're hearing these people tell these stories themselves
Yeah.
from their own perspective. Now, there are stories from the news, the Cokeville Miracle and the the butterfly people of Joplin. I sourced those and found those stories and compiled them into an episode. But, there are so many, most of the stories, in fact, from Real Life Angel Encounters podcast and book are told by the real people who experienced them.
Yeah, yeah.
And Mm, it is so convincing to hear real people tell these real stories.
Well, and I'm thinking that they have an audience that wants to hear. And when you were telling your story, being a child, where who can I tell about my reality? Nobody here understands it. I think when we have these experiences, we're looking for who can I talk to about this? This is an amazing thing that just happened, but it's not really always safe with most of the population, and as the space that you create in on your podcast is a safe space because everyone's coming there to hear the stories.
Right, right. The detractors, I've not encountered any as far as the show or the book. Everybody seems to be very open to it. I will talk to people. It's like, I've got a new book coming out. What's it about? It's about angels. Oh, okay.
And you have angels too. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
Absolutely, so that might be the most of it, it's like, angels, huh? Okay, that's different."
Well, we've been trained to live in a very flat world where we discount miracles, we discount the fantastic things that happen, we discount the divine. We've been trained to really, uh, it's hard to describe, but it's almost like we have like we have the capability of seeing many, many more colors than we do, but we only see the visible spectrum that we see. It's kinda like that.
Very much so.
Yeah, and so it's like people I think are afraid to open up to that, and also, we live in a very material focused society where, it's about the body and the brain and nothing really and supernatural is considered, mental illness and things like that, it's discounted. And what is that? That's certainly, the egos, not really wanting to consider a bigger reality than we live in. We live in a really big reality.
We live in a very big reality, and I think a lot of that, Carol, has to come from religious programming. Not unity, of course, but people who were brought up in strict religious contexts that you are not worthy of having an angelic or miraculous encounter. You are naturally sinful. You were born with that. What is special about you that you can have these experiences? And so, in a way, that we're almost set up with the expectation that we won't. But we don't have to be Joan of Arc to hear angels around us or to receive a visit. Everybody has the ability to do this. We're all part of that. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah,
You know,
people think that this happened a long time ago, like angels came a long time ago. They also think the same thing about demons, that happened a long time ago, that doesn't have that was stuff in people's imagination, or that was their their ability to understand reality at the time. I think it's interesting that you mentioned that it's the influence of religion, because I was thinking it was the influence of science, like that we are science, that we can't really look at these fantastical things that are unexplained. Everything can be explained by what we already know, and that's not in our realm of understanding, so therefore it's discounted.
right. And I think there is a fair amount of that as well. And I keep coming back to we can look at things as if everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. So we can look at, the cardinals coming around on a specific day. They don't come around every day, but they often come around when I'm doing QHHT. And so there may be someone saying, oh, well, maybe that's the day that the mowers are turned or off and the people aren't mowing their grasses. And so they're feel safe coming out, or you do live next to, or you do have an office next to all of these beautiful trees, of course, there's gonna be cardinals. We could look at things scientifically, but where's the fun in that, honestly?
Well, and also you don't really know even the lawnmower, all of that, and why is it on that day, and why did they come out at that time that would
Right.
cause the cardinals to come this way, and, it's all kind of a part of the divine fabric. I do have a question for you. I think that, I remember Myrtle Fillmore, one of the co-founders of Unity. I remember her stating at some point, I don't have the exact quote, but that sometimes we get stuck in the paranormal. Sometimes we get stuck in the kind of the fantastical and we forget our source, that we don't go to God, that we have a direct connection to God. And so we get stuck in this place where I don't know if she said angels specifically, but you know, uh, mediumship and spirits and soul, all of that, when we could just go directly to God. And I'm kind of wondering what you think about that.
That's a very good point. And, something I was going to mention when you talked about demon, I find that people are more apt to believe in a demon experience in their life or a ghostly experience, a paranormal experience, than an angel experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
I find so
Yeah.
many more people who are open to that than to angels. But to answer your question, you know, we can go right to God. We can go right to the source, but we often forget. We can go to our angels anytime. And this is what I do for a living, and I forget to ask.
Mhm.
But we can go right to the top and ask why not. I believe, honestly, it's all part of the same thing anyway.
I do too. Yeah. It's like, we have this imagination that God is this being. We go directly to God and God says, okay, let me give it to that angel. We that's how it works in our imagination, that because that's how our world is set up. But it's like not that. It's something we can't quite grasp from our earthly experience, but it's
Yeah.
something that's not that. Like the whole fabric of the divine dimensions is always constantly interacting. And when we put something out there, ask and you will receive, knock and the door will be opened. And it may not be what we're expecting behind that door, but the door is opened and we can choose to go through the door that opens or not. But that's kinda how it seems to work from my standpoint.
No, from mine as well. Yeah, we always have the choice. We have free will. We can accept the help and walk through that door or not. We don't have to do any of it. But I also keep getting pulled back to unity principle number 1, which says that God is good and in everything everywhere. That
Right.
means
Right.
that God is in this pen. That means God is in this cup. That means God is in me. That means God is in the air around us. Everything is God. So why wouldn't angels be God,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah. That's the first one.
For a reason, because I think it's the most important.
It's all of it. Yeah. It's everything.
It's all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that I think about is that people often will say, "Okay, great. The angel showed up for those kids, but why didn't they show up for these other kids over here that had some disaster thing happen to them?" And, how do you explain that, or do you feel like it needs to be explained?
That is a really interesting question and one that I'm afraid I don't have the answer to. Why did the angels show up in Cokeville but not Sandy Hook?
Yeah,
Right? Why did they show up in Joplin but not at the school in Florida? Why did they not show up there? And that is an excellent question. And I don't know that we'll ever truly know the answer to that. But we do have to have faith that there is a bigger reason to it and that there has got to be, please, there has to be some lesson or message or method that we're just not seeing right now.
yeah. I think that is really the way it is. I mean, we do not know why bad things happen or what we think is bad, what we judge as bad. We don't know. We unless we kind of really pull up. I always liken it to like a tapestry where we're just tiny little threads in this tapestry, and you can't even see what the tapestry is until you get a really, really high view. And so we don't know that this thing that we discern or we decide is bad. What good will come out of that? What good will come out of it? Good does come out of it, and so we have to have faith and trust in that and be thankful for the angels that show up and how they show up and when they show up and how God responds to our prayers, and also trust that good is manifesting and that the whole fabric is moving towards, a higher way of being, and that we are all a part of it in our own way.
I agree fully that, we are all doing the best that we can with what we have at any given moment. And we have to always trust that I don't see the good in this situation now. That doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
Our neighbors lost their actually college age daughter several years ago. I went to the funeral and our congressman, Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver, um, is a minister, and he's our congressman too, in on the national level. But he was preaching the sermon for the service, and he was talking about, we need to get our blessings out of everything. There's going to be a blessing everywhere, but we just don't see it. And he says we might not see it now, but there is a blessing behind Sharice's passing, and we hope to know it at some point, but there's always a blessing, and sometimes you just have to hang on and hang in there and just keep asking, "What is the blessing? What is my blessing?" And I talked to that girl's brother after the service, and he said if there's any blessing, it's like we don't have to worry when we get a call in the middle of the night because, Sharice had epilepsy, and she was away at college, but she was just down the street at UMKC, and they still worried about her having a big episode, a seizure, and not making it, and he said, "If there's any blessing, we don't have to worry about her anymore. She's good. She's fine. She's healed."
And there may be many more blessings. My brother, lost his 26-year-old daughter, same thing. It's like, ho
Mhm.
young, vibrant, really alive, and
Yeah.
and suddenly she's not here anymore, and it's hard to go. It's kinda easier when my 96-year-old dad, who lived a
Yeah.
full life, passes. But then when the 26-year-old goes, it's like, "What the heck is that about? This is horrible." And yet without saying, "Oh, well, it was just her time and God came to collect her," I don't say that. We don't know. We don't have any idea why this happened. It was very, very mysterious. And yet I do have complete faith and trust in God, in the divine, in the way that everything is, constructed in our world, that good comes of this, that good will come, good has come, and it doesn't mean that, "Oh, it's a good thing that happened." It's just that out of this, we will find good and we will grow in some way. Maybe somebody will turn to God that never did before. Maybe somebody will realize that life is short and I've got to go live it. There's all sorts of things that can happen when a young person passes.
That's right, that's right. And something that gives me a lot of comfort is our loved ones' visits, the stories of our loved ones coming back, delivering a message, um, giving us signs and symbols because we know that they truly have not left us. They are paying attention to us and they are connecting with us. And so I love stories of loved ones, and I count those as angel encounters too, and there are a couple in the book. And it's very, very comforting.
Yeah, I think it is, and yet some people are looking for that sign, like, I haven't seen they didn't show up in the room, they haven't come to talk to me, but they do show up in different ways, like you mentioned the cardinal.
Yes, we have to be open to it. Now,
Yeah.
there is a story in the book. Angela had lost her sister several years ago, and she was like, "Gosh darn it, Melissa." Just, I want a sign from you. Give me a sign. And she had listened to some podcast or show or something where there was a medium who was saying, you need to ask and be very specific in the sign that you want to receive. And she thought, well, I'll try it. She said, I want to see a bluebird. And it was winter time. And she knew that there's not a lot of bluebird. I don't know if there's even any bluebirds here in the Kansas City and Kansas and Missouri regions. And she was driving back and forth to Parsons, Kansas, which is to visit her partner, which is like a good hour or so away. And she just set it and forget it. I'm going to ask my sister to send me a bluebird. I'm going to keep my eyes and ears and open and just see what happens. And that's what we need to do. Well, what happened was her friend had sent her this CD. And, it was right around the time that everybody started streaming instead of playing CDs. Her friend sent her a CD. She happened to have a CD player in her car. She thought, I've got this long drive ahead of me. I might as well listen to the CD. And it was her favorite singer, Howard Jones. And she puts this CD in, and there's a song that's talking about, like the bluebird, I'm free.
Oh my gosh.
And she knew that was her sign, and it wasn't, okay, here's the kicker. It wasn't even a Howard Jones song. He was doing a cover of David Bowie's song Lazarus, and the refrain is like the bluebird, I'm free, and she knew that her sister was saying, I'm got goosebumps. Her sister was saying, I'm free of my body, and I'm good, I made it, I'm okay. So, there's more details in the book. You'll have to go read the book to find out more of the story. But we can receive signs in so many different ways. When she was specific. Did she say, I want to hear about a bluebird on a Howard Jones CD and it wasn't even a song? No, she didn't. She says, I want a bluebird.
Well, and I
And
think most people would think they're looking for an actual bluebird, and unless a
right,
bluebird shows up, then it didn't work. But I just love how spirit is so creative, and we have to be open to I put my request out, and so often we have imagined how that's going to be answered. And so we don't even see it when it's answered because it didn't show up in the same form that we thought it would. So that's a really good story about how the form she asked and you received, she asked, she got something back very clearly that responded to her exact request. And it was not in the same form that I think most people would have expected. And you have to really be open to that because spirit's very creative.
right, right. And in a way, kind of literal too,
Yeah.
because it was referencing bluebird but it wasn't actually a bird.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, I would recommend, like, if somebody's asking for a sign like that, just to be open. This to go back to her example, this could have been you're at a thrift store and there's little salt and pepper shakers in the form of a bluebird,
Right.
or it's on, there's a painting in the museum, right? So, be open to that.
Yeah. That's a really, really great advice. I think, let me see if I have anything else. Oh, I guess my last question was I'm curious about what thoughts you have about how angels are depicted, like in TV and on film, movies, and all. There was a whole show, Touched by an Angel, long time ago in the early 2000s. And then there's It's a Wonderful Life, where the angel shows up as kind of a little bit of a buffoon. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
I do, but first I wanna tell you my very favorite angel depiction is John Travolta as Archangel Michael.
Oh, and that's a good one. Yeah. I haven't
I
seen that in a
love it.
long time. That was a long time ago. Like, was that in the
It
90s? When was that?
Oh, yeah, it was
Yeah,
way back then.
yeah.
Him and Andy McDowell in it, they looked so young. They were so, so young. And, yeah, Michael in that, he's walking around the house in his underwear and his wings, and he's scratching himself and belching and spilling cereal all over the place, and then he gets to a bar and people are fighting, he goes control. He charges into it. That's my favorite depiction. But, there's so many depictions, like Clarence in It's a Wonderful Life. He's trying to earn his wings, and he's
Yeah.
kind of and he's a simple guy. But, all of these depictions are I think it just opens our minds to the possibilities.
Mhm.
When we get the Christmas cards and we get We've got Guardian Angels Church here in Kansas City, and there's all these statues of these beautiful winged, robed, haloed beings, and that's great. But then we also have the Clarences from It's a Wonderful Life, and we have Touched by an Angel. We have Michael, John Travolta. All of these just show us how vast this realm really is and how they can show up in our lives. I think there's a lot of truth in a lot of Hollywood
Yeah, I think there is.
that
Yeah.
it's fiction, but I think it's more fictionalized than anything else.
Yeah, yeah. I love that Touched by an Angel show. Every week was different, and they kind of showed up as a person in somebody's life and kinda helping them in some way, and then just kind of vanished away. Did you watch that show ever?
No, I didn't.
Oh, no, that's okay, that's okay. It's I don't even know if it's accessible anymore, but it was a really good show. It was like a weekly TV show, and I remember watching it with my daughters who were, teen, preteen, and I also had a younger one, and it was kind of a family show, like, we could all watch it, and, I can't remember the name of the star in it now. There were 2 stars. Della Reese, I think, was one. Um
Michael Lee.
Michael Landon, I think, was one, and the other woman, the young one, I can't remember her name. I think she had 3 names. Anyway, but it was a show that the whole family can watch, and it just encouraged you to recognize these people that beam into your life and help you with something in some way and and then go away, like the story you told about the man who helped the young woman, change the tire. He kinda beamed in and then kind of left, and so there's a lot of things like that in that series, and I
Oh,
really,
that's
really liked it. I wish they would do something like that again, or maybe I could find it on Amazon, I'm not sure.
That
Um
reminds me of a story in the book of the angel in the Walmart aisle where this woman was in a rush. She was trying to make it to a meeting at her kid's school, needed to pick something up for a craft for this event she was working on, and stopped in. She really didn't have time, but she did it anyway and ran into this woman who needed some help putting together a centerpiece and wanted her opinion. And she was like, I'm late, lady. But no, she thought, something is saying I need to stay and I need to help this woman. And she says, I just felt that everyone in the meeting would understand. And so she did. She stuck around, she helped this lady. And the woman said, thank you. You are my angel. And she felt like she was. This woman had just lost her husband, was planning a Thanksgiving, the first one without him, and was looking for something for a centerpiece. And this woman came by and helped. And in that moment, she was the angel. So we never know when we can touch someone else like that.
Yeah, I really like that story. So the angel can be something that's, external to us and that is a being that is helping us. It could be a nudge, intuition, guidance, it could be a voice, and it could be us. We could always be an angel for another person. That was a great story because I could really sympathize with her being in a hurry. And like, I've got to go somewhere. I have a commitment to be somewhere at a certain time, and this person over here is asking this of me. We have a choice in that moment. Who are we gonna be? Are we gonna be stuck in the ego material demands of the world and do what needs to be done there? Or are we gonna open ourselves up to being this miracle for another person? And I think those opportunities show up a lot for us. That's a great story to remind people that we can always step into that angel role for another. So thank you for sharing that one.
Absolutely. It's one of my top ones too.
It's a great one. It's a great one. Well, we're just a little past an hour. If I'd had more time, I would love to hear more about your other book about reversing most chronic diseases because I know people are interested in that. I know that's also a bestseller book. So maybe we'll have you back on to talk about that.
I would love to.
So before we close, Christy, anything else you want to share with people about what's up for you or any last words that you want to leave with people?
Absolutely. First of all, read Real Life Angel Encounters. It's available July 1st in the United States, June 24th in the UK. I understand this episode is going to be out past those dates, so you're going to be good. You can find it wherever you find good books. And listen to the Real Life Angel Encounters podcast that is on every podcast platform. If you're listening now to this podcast, Real Life Angel Encounters is there too. So listen to that and tell your story. The podcast and the book is, which is incidentally going to be a series, wouldn't go very far if we didn't have stories. So we need stories. Please do that. And then you can visit my website, which is radiatewellnesscommunity.com. You can go to the podcast tab and you'll have both of the podcasts there. And then lastly, I'm in a documentary series. I can't believe it. This is going to be so cool. It premieres June 14th all around the world. It's called Journeys into the Soul. It will be on Gaia TV and it's also available on Amazon, or will be. Season 2 will be available soon on Amazon. And then you can also look at journeysintothesoul.com and watch pay-per-view there.
And all of this is happening in Kansas City.
It's all happening at the same time, which is a little crazy, but that's cool. That's
Uh,
really cool.
okay, Christi, thank you so much for joining me and sharing about angels. I know this is a topic people really love, so I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your stories.
Oh, I'm so happy to do it. It's my favorite thing to talk about, and I've really enjoyed my time with you, Reverend Carol. Thank you so much.
Me too. Thank you, everybody. And I now close the spiritual forum.